Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well. Today I will be showing you the behind the scenes process of a new print that I was making over the past couple weeks. It is inspired by springtime and the words ordinary and extraordinary. And the first thing that I think of is how we view animals in nature and how we see larger animals to be extraordinary and smaller animals to be more of the ordinary animals that we see more often. With that, we tend to view the smaller animals as more nuisance animals, like they don't contribute to nature as much, or maybe they don't seem as interesting at first glance. I thought it was fitting with spring weather coming up. We're seeing all of these animals reemerge, and I wanted to include them all together on a print to show how equal in significance they all are to each other. Here you'll see me drawing out my concept for this piece with the protector guardian moose watching over the rest of the forest animals. You'll see that I scan this into the computer so that I can manipulate it digitally, because moose antlers are about 6 feet wide, and I wanted to make sure that all the animals fit proportionally within the antlers. So scanning it in digitally would allow me to reposition the animals and resize them however I'd want without having to erase. Then the thing that I always forget with printmaking is that the image is gonna flip around when you print it, so I had to make sure that it looked good either way, because your eyes have a tendency to fool you when you see that first print flipped around. This printmaking project in particular is called Intaglio. It's when you carve or etch into a metal plate and then dip it in an acid bath, which further etches your drawing into the plate where your ink will catch your drawing once you're done. Here you can see all of my little scrapes that I have dug into the plate, and this is done through a hard ground, which is actually made of asphaltum, or what is used in asphalt, as well as beeswax and rosin from pine trees. So this is used to coat the metal plate. That way the only part that gets touched by the acid is where I'm scratching through right now, as you'll see I'm doing with a very fine tip needle pen. As you've seen in my previous videos, I'm a total geek for the process behind printmaking, and there's so much that goes into printing one print, especially with Intaglio. It's a very long, tedious process, and you don't see the results until the very end. This process is really reminiscent of my childhood and scratching into those black plates where it reveals the rainbow colors underneath. I found this really relaxing to do. Here you'll see that where that shine is catching is the actual copper of the plate showing through, and that will be what is etched with the acid. I drew on this plate until sunset, and it was completely dark out by the time I stopped for the night. This was after about 6 hours of drawing on the plate, and it's very hard to see the amount of detail that's in this drawing just glancing at the reflections that are bouncing off of it, but you'll be able to see more detail once it's printed. Drawing with this tool is pretty equivalent to if you were to draw with a needle. It's very impressive to me how precise and detailed you can get with this, because the acid will burn through the tiniest of pinpricks on this plate, and it really just does a gorgeous job of retaining detail. The next day I was back at the studio dissolving off the hard ground that was protecting our plate after I etched it. So here I'm taking that off and revealing where everything etched into my plate. The next step you'll see is a soft ground technique. As the name suggests, it's softer so you can press materials into it, And here are the natural materials that I've placed on the plate where that soft ground is setting. I ran it through the press, and now I am going to chip away at getting all those natural materials off the plate. Here's what's left behind. The copper is showing through again, and the rest of my image is protected from the acid. So for our second etch in the acid, this is the only spots that will bite into the copper. Here's the result of the second etch. Everywhere where it's a little bit darker is where the acid has etched into the plate and made a texture for the ink to catch on. Alright, and now because I have to be an overachiever, I chose a third technique called spit bite. This is a technique that, funny enough, you would normally use your spit for and drop the acid directly into your spit to help spread it around the plate. So instead of dipping the plate into acid, you're setting it right on top of the plate and painting it on. The spit in this process would act as a fluid for the acid to float around in, and you get kind of a watercolor texture in the background after this is etched into the plate because of the subtleties that the acid creates. It's not as hard of an etch because it doesn't directly touch the surface. It has to bite through your spit to get to the copper of the plate. After inking up my entire plate like in the last clip, I wiped it all off, and the only ink that remains is what is stuck in that texture. So now the next thing to do is to print it. I feel that the inking process of the Intaglio prints is the epitome of when people tell you to use your elbow grease, because you're getting a huge arm workout wiping off all of this thick ink off of your plate, so that the only ink that remains is that in the grooves of your plate, whereas the rest is going to be clean enough for the white of the paper to show through. Here, blankets are layered over top of the paper and the plate to protect the roller of our press bed from getting damaged from the copper. The press needs to be extremely heavy and filled with tension over top of your print, and this means that a lot of work goes into even turning the wheel that you see me turning to get that press to move, and it's just another aspect of printmaking that makes each print so valuable. I'm in awe with how much detail remained from the natural plant materials that I had impressed into the soft ground. All of the veins of the flowers and the leaves came through, which was just absolutely mind-blowing to me, and they turned out so cool. Since this was a color assignment, I moved forward with hand coloring each one of these with watercolor. So I went back into the print and painted all of these colors in for some depth. Overall, I'm super happy with how these turned out, and I think that it was just perfect timing that I found a process that I enjoyed so much, because this was my last week of school. I'm recording this voiceover on my last day, and it's very bittersweet to be leaving, but I'm so thankful for everything that I've learned along the way and gotten to share with you. So thank you for being here today and watching a little bit of the process behind these prints. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Have a great week.